Some late weekend night in the fall of 2007, three teenage boys, fresh off a successful marching band season, were throwing a Warcraft 3 LAN party on custom-built PC rigs set up on cheap folding tables in an unfinished room of somebody's basement. The night lingered, and time seemed to stand still as long as nobody watched the clock. As the hours grew thin, the boys ran out of steam and decided to leave their keyboards and mice for other entertainment. Not yet willing to give up on the night, they stumbled through a series of Xbox game cases. My first experience with Magic the Gathering would be reading the back of the case to Magic the Gathering Battlegrounds, a well-animated, if mechanically simplistic, tug-of-war game for the Xbox that would become the catalyst for my obsession with trading card games. Captivated by Battlegrounds, unable to set the controller down between games, I finally paused as one friend remarked that it was actually based on a card game that they had readily available. I was happier than I let on when I replied, "Now is as good a time as any." They pulled out two decks, Elves and Kithkin. The Lord of the Rings fan in me was immediately hooked. The art was iconic, the tribal themes built story and narrative in my mind. The gameplay presented me both with challenges to overcome and creative avenues to explore. When teaching new players the game of Magic, I've always liked to start with "You are a Planeswalker," an acknowledgement that every game begins with a concession by the player to be something they are not. That every game of Magic is an invitation to play not just a game, but a character. For years, new set releases were exciting opportunities to meet new characters, your compatriots or your rivals, and experience their story. Pulling a Planeswalker fresh from a pack felt like you were being assigned a role in an RPG you were booting up, like destiny had called, and this was your story, not just to read, but to build, to shape, and to live. I believe I fell in love with Magic as a trading card game for the same reason many of us did. The world of fantasy, power, and wits that it offered was an attractive escape from the pop culture surrounding us. But over the ensuing decades, we also all shared in the experience of that world slowly warping into something quite different than what it had been, a classic boiling frog dilemma. MTG was the only card game I had ever played for so long. Sure, I opened some Pokemon packs 20 years prior, but I was never moved to learn how the game played. Pokemon as a TCG was simply a series of fond memories I carried with me. Magic was my passion. The art and lore, the beasts and fowls, the mages and assassins, I had convinced myself, were all I would ever need. And for so long, that worked. New Magic sets came out quarterly, new blocks yearly, each telling its own story, each introducing its own landscapes, creatures, heroes, and villains. I was a comfortable frog in a wide and deep pot, where many other frogs, in fact, every other frog I had ever known, also swam comfortably. But the temperature was rising. Our game was becoming diluted and distorted. American philosopher William James said that a poor definition is worse than no definition at all. 20 years ago, the scope of the planes in Magic seemed fairly well defined. As with all pots of frogs, the temperature rose slowly at first, but over time the proliferation of Universes Beyond products became overwhelming, and every line that was drawn as a promise to the players was quickly erased and forgotten. And, as others have noted, even the universes within sets have felt poorly defined within the broader scope of the game. Taking high fantasy characters and making them cowboys one minute and pod racers the next really destroyed the carefully constructed veneer of planeswalkers as characters who interacted with their world and turned them into cut-rate actors, Hollywood sellouts who would take any gig that pays. This poor definition felt, to me and I think many others, worse than no definition at all. After being promised an immaculate, top-tier, high-fantasy trading card game, it was hard not to feel let down by the current crop of Universes Beyond and Within offerings. As the water us frogs were all swimming in began to get even warmer, I noticed that cracking packs had become a chore, that I was chasing a feeling I used to have, a feeling that opening packs couldn't provide me anymore. This became truly evident for the first time in 2021 when, briefly grabbed by childhood nostalgia, I was sucked into the COVID-fueled Pokemon craze. I remembered what it felt like to get not just cards, but joy from every pack I opened. It took cracking packs of Caterpie and Pidgeotto to make me realize that opening packs of Obnixilis and Urza had lost their luster. To a frog like me, in a pot becoming increasingly uncomfortable, it was like getting a cool splash of water on my face, making me realize that the pot had gotten significantly hotter. I realized in a fairly short span of time that everything from draft to commander had been becoming progressively less appealing options for quite some time. That the broken promises, the universes beyond, and the increasing mechanical complexity had eroded what attracted me to Magic in the first place, and that what passion was left was a mix of my own inertia from having been involved with the game for so long, and nostalgia for the world-building of blocks that had been tossed aside in favor of an endless hype cycle that demanded every new set be original enough to stand out. My dissatisfaction with Magic didn't happen all at once, and it didn't happen without significant resistance, which came in the shape of trying new format after new format to reignite my passion. But it did eventually happen, like a shelf with just one book too many, finally collapsing after slowly bowing for years. It was functional and intact one minute, and totally broken the next. Several different arguments can be made in defense of continuing to play Magic. For one, formats like Old School exist, and cover many of the problems that I discuss here. Or you can simply ignore issues in new release products and play Block Constructed. Or you can even argue that the core Magic experience persists in Draft and Sealed, at least as long as play boosters remain extant. There's also the reality that Magic is a juggernaut with 3 decades of momentum behind it, and that the Commander format alone would continue to be a massively popular social experience for many years to come, even if another Magic card was never printed after tomorrow. All of those are true at face value. The broader problem is that while Magic the Gathering will never be defined by its mistakes, it does suffer from them. It's true that the cards WotC printed 10, 20, 30 years ago still exist and can be played with today the same as back then, but it's also true that we exist in time, and for a hobby like trading card games that's largely defined by the social experience surrounding it, the past cannot be resurrected. Something that gamers who are ever part of a guild or a clan in an MMO are well aware of. The cards still exist, but the social experience surrounding them is gone, and the one that has replaced it is tainted by what the game has become. Tainted by being lied to, by being pushed around and bullied by a suite of C-level execs who want to twist and corrupt your nostalgia into being nothing more than a stepping stone to higher quarterly profits. Every man has his own breaking point, a place he's pushed to by disappointment and betrayal. A place where the cons finally outweigh the pros and he is drugged from apathy into some small measure of ambition. Enough so to try something new, to consider that maybe the pot of water he's been sitting in has, in fact, gotten too hot and can no longer be tolerated. I'm sad to say that I don't remember how I was introduced to Sorcery Contested Realm. I'm a jack-of-all-trades type of guy who loves trying out new card games and keeping up with news all over the TCG world. I do remember, however, the first Sorcery cards I got to look at, Truett Parish's own Jihad and Crusade. Completely ensorcelled with the art and captivated by the promise of the game's ambitious vision, I dove in headfirst and ordered 2 beta booster boxes. I've found that in life, often the key to happiness is lowered expectations, advice that's much easier to give than to follow. When the beta boxes arrived, I found myself much in need of that advice. I had fully bought into the hype as I sat down to open my first booster box, intending to keep the second one sealed. Opening that booster box of beta was an experience leagues above my already high expectations. No pack felt like a dud because every card in every pack was a genuine work of art, a feeling that for me never dulled. Pack after pack, I was drawn deeper into the contested realm and out of the pot of boiling water. In that moment, there was a profound awareness that I was present in what would become a lasting and impactful memory. The art on every card in that box did its job, to give hope. I felt like a floundering fish long stranded on a beach who had just been swept up in a high tide, able to be a fish again for the first time in ages. I felt an overwhelming sense of camaraderie with folks I'd never met, the artists and designers who answered their own quixotic call to do this, the players and collectors, fellow box openers who must feel the same as me. All of us were now standing on a thin ledge to produce and support a game likely dismissed by many in our social circles and playgroups with notions of impracticality. But opening my first box of Sorcery filled me with the conviction that these were windmills worth tilting at. It was that conviction that led me to see Sorcery as a clarion call to take up arms against apathy. For me and those kindred spirits on the same path, it is a call not to accept the mediocrity of Magic the Gathering simply because it is the path of least resistance. It took another 3 hours for my willpower to give way and open the other box of beta, where I would pull a foil ruby core, a sign if there ever was one. It was my invitation, my call, as a longtime mono-red enthusiast, to point my TCG passion in a new direction and see where the winds would take me. It was that night I decided to take a step back from Magic and stride confidently into Sorcery. In that same original order I placed from you probably know who was a box of pre-constructed decks and a playmat. My good friend and longtime card-playing companion sat down with me to fumble our way through the rulebook while we moved the cards around the board in a way that loosely resembled gameplay. Of course, this wasn't new to us. We had experimented for years with new, quirky MTG formats, board games with too many different colored pips, and more recently several other TCGs. Sorcery was different. Choices all felt impactful. Every site seemed to have a proper place in the realm, a decision not to be made lightly. Every minion had a skill, some talent, that gave him a directive, set him on a quest from the moment he entered the realm. Our post-game recaps took as long as the game did, as we couldn't help but explore every line of play, endlessly toying with what could have happened. Most importantly, I felt transported to a fantastical and outlandish world that was more like a fairy tale's battlefield than a competitive gameplay arena. Even better, it was a world that I got to help build, and whose story my choices would help write. As the months passed, my interest in Sorcery and my disinterest in other TCGs changed in opposite directions at about the same pace. I began to embrace the oddity, the newness. I was interested in deck building again in a whole new way, as totally unique considerations had to be made with regards to resource management and card synergies. I looked forward to cracking packs in a way I hadn't since Magic sets were still released in blocks or cycles, back when a trip to the video rental store had me as excited about chasing mythics as it did chasing the newest DVD release. I have a lot more to say about some of the big reasons I love Sorcery gameplay, from the tactical demands of the 4x5 grid that it's played on to the create-your-own-adventure vibe that the faceless avatars give off. But those ideas are for another time. Right now, my goal is to get you, the enfranchised or maybe disenfranchised Magic player, to try Sorcery Contested Realm. What I can tell you as a voice from the other side is that it has more beautiful art, a brighter future, and strikingly brilliant gameplay. Look at some cards, check out the rules, maybe watch a how to play video. Watch a box opening for sure, just understand that like any other art, it's better live. I'd be a liar if I told you that I had totally erased Magic the Gathering from my life. I still play Commander with the same folks I have for years, and that will remain a social avenue for me as long as there are people I care about who want to play Commander with me. I'll also likely never possess the willpower to turn down a vintage cube draft, and I still have 20-year-old booster boxes adorning my shelves, which will always be priceless to me for the memories that they hold on to. But those memories are locked forever in the time capsules we call booster packs. What Magic is now is not what it was then. It will never be 2007 again. The good news is that in our present year there is something just as exciting as those cards were then. Friends, the future with Sorcery is bright. There are packs you won't be able to keep sealed, there are decks you can't wait to homebrew, and there are weekend nights full of games you will spend all week looking forward to. So, if for a while now you've been playing and collecting Magic the Gathering with less and less enthusiasm, if you've lost all the excitement in trading cards, I would ask you now to consider trading games, from Magic to Sorcery.